truth is there are two churches. The one that follows the teachings of Christ, the one we are part of, and the other. The church that turned a blind eye to torture, to rape, to commit murder in the name of God. All in the name of a supreme power.
Welcome to Morally Offensive, a podcast that's all for you, Damien. I'm Bill.
I'm Jess.
And today we are discussing a prequel to one of the great Catholic horror franchises.
This is a podcast about the films condemned or considered morally offensive by the Catholic Church.
We both grew up Catholic, and now we're not for reasons. But we are still fascinated by the religion that raised us. The films we cover are selected from the official film review lists of the Legion of Decency, Rest in Peace, and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. I am a motion graphics designer, editor, and DJ.
And I am an instructional designer with a PhD in film and television studies.
And together, we are on a journey to watch every film condemned or considered morally offensive. Jess, welcome back to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
And this week, of course, we are digging into the Omen prequel, a prequel to the First Omen, the first movie that is The Omen, not the First Omen, this movie, but also not the remake from a few years ago.
No, the creation of Damien.
Yes, the creation of Damien. So I'd like to welcome one of our friends from the internet, Tif Robinette, who is an author, screenwriter, among many other titles, who we met honestly through doing this podcast. Tif, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here.
I am so pumped to talk about this movie with you. I feel like we've been talking about it for a while now and sending information and memes back and forth. So now to finally actually do it is super awesome. Before we start, I want to real quick ask, I know you come from a kind of similar fundamentalist Christian background, but not Catholic. What does that look like for you, and where are you at now with stuff?
Oh my goodness. Wow, what a saga. What a journey. Yeah, my parents started out in the Plymouth Brethren, which is a dispensationalist, Calvinist, very heavy Calvinist, biblical literalist group, and gradually got more and more radicalized out of that into, for all intents and purposes, like a cult. It checked all the boxes.
Okay.
And they were more, I would say, a mix of IBLP families, and sorry, this is a hard thing to talk about.
No, and you can definitely give us the Cliff Notes version of it. That's, if you want to dive into it.
Yeah, so gradually more and more fundamentalist, way more extremist, and then, I was always a skeptic. I think I was born a skeptic. So I really tried to do and believe everything within that world, but I asked too many questions.
Same.
And so eventually those questions very much led me out of organized religion in general. So so at this point I am I'm a skeptic, but I am eternally curious about weird religion and weird spirituality in general. So I spend a lot of my time, going down esoteric rabbit holes, looking at history of the church, looking at other spiritualist
movements.
Whole movements. I've been really deep into conspirituality right now. My brain is...
Okay.
So
what you have to tell me about this. What is conspirituality for the audience at home?
It's a term that's been sort of coined in the last few years. I think maybe there was a book called Conspirituality, which I haven't gotten to yet. But it's this sort of marriage of conspiracy theory. It's sort of like a cesspool of spirituality. So there's a lot of times there'll be it'll be like the apocalypse and Jesus returning, but also like aliens and a master race and reptilians. Like it's just
so Jack Van Impe. Were you familiar with Jack Van Impe?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So trying to make sense of it or like explain what it is like trying to like grab gloop and like squeeze it and like pick it up. Like the gloop keeps glooping.
I am obsessed with Jack Van Impe. I used to watch his show out of Ann Arbor in Michigan growing up, and it'd be on at like 11 at night, ranting about aliens and the apocalypse. And they'd have really cool, like bad graphics, like bad drawings of aliens and Bigfoot and stuff. And it was wild. And I had a lot of his records too, because like he would talk about Detroit rock bands specific, like name them and call them out. So I was like, this is cool. He's just damning them all to hell. And like, it's good samples for DJing. So I've always been into that stuff. I love it. It's so wacky. It's harmful, but also I would be kind of sad if it wasn't a thing that existed, because I kind of do secretly love it.
I was raised in an extremist version of a religion. Right. And so I'm just like, I need to know like how people are getting into this, what they're thinking.
Yes.
Like it's the like human side of it all. Like, yes, there's a lot of weirdness and I love the weird. Like if I see something weird, like I'm there. But it's like, how do people find communities and like in these belief systems? Like that's what really fascinates me.
Something that I was kind of unpacking as leaving the church was trying to understand how people who I knew who had previously been very rational people through charismatic influence, through traditionalist Catholic influence in pretty regular communities, but that influence has been spreading into regular Catholic communities. These people started believing that in like the fluoride is a communist plot or Nazi plot, in the idea, that kind of stuff, or that, COVID conspiracy theories, and it's all linked to their religion. That's the interesting part about it. It's not just that they believe these things, that it's coming from a religious place, specifically conservative Catholicism. And the Catholicism they're practicing backs that up, which I never understood because I was living in Chicago being pretty normal Catholic. So I didn't get it. But I'm also fascinated by that. And it's interesting because that kind of plays into the subject of today's movie.
I also just want to say, too, that like I love the conspirituality aspect of it because this is a new term to me.
Yes.
And you can fire me. I know I bring up TV too much. My specialty is kind of television, but I watch The Boys, which is like a satirical superhero show on Amazon Prime. And conspirituality has come up recently because it's gotten real religious. And like Eric Kripke commenting online of like just how insane the show has gotten at like coinciding with
predicting
we were talking about this weekend, right? Of, a day before Donald Trump unveiled his golden statue. Homelander has a golden statue in The Boys, things like that. Oh, wow. But just kind of this idea of like political figures convalescing with religion, with wellness, becoming gurus, things like that. In that regard, there's this kind of theme of like conspirituality.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up TV too, Jess, and pop culture information. I need that because I have a hard time watching TV. It takes a long time to get through a season, but that's why we don't do it on the show, because we would never finish episodes.
I just think it's really fun that she's like brought up and an expert in this word that I'm like, I get. The Boys is one of the shows that like I'm on Reddit threads and I'm deep in it. And this word keeps popping up and I'm like, what is this? This is fantastic. And then I found like a couple podcasts talking about it and stuff too. And I was like, this is wild, and like perfect summation of what they're doing in these episodes.
And it really does tie into the themes of apocalypse and church
100%.
Conspiracies we are discussing today.
Yep.
Yeah.
So given that, let me establish now, Tif, do you know a little bit about the Catholic rating system, the bishop's rating system here, the Legion of Decency?
Yes. And I've been really interested in pre-coded films for a very long time. I just find them so delightful and transgressive in like these really fun ways. Like what they're getting away with was amazing. My favorite is Babyface, like hands down.
Oh, yeah, it's classic.
You just got right into my heart with that one.
It was funny. I had a callback to Babyface the other day because I found at an estate sale a pre-code movie I'd never heard of called College Coach, which is kind of like an alternative take on the Marx Brothers Horse Feathers movie. It's very similar in plot. But John Wayne just like bursts into frame at some point and then leaves. And I was like, what is that?
That's Dick Powell.
Yeah,
right?
it's a Dick Powell movie, but John Wayne is in it for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And Kelly was like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "No, that's John Wayne. Listen to him." So I'm like rewinding it, and he's like, "How you doing, coach?" And then leaves the frame, and I'm like, "That's totally John Wayne."
Gotta get your start somewhere.
Just like in Babyface, he's just popping into stuff.
Yeah, just popping in and out. Because I'm into the pre-code films, I'm like very aware of the Hays Code, and then also the like religious backlash. Particularly the Catholics were like going pretty hard about it.
Oh yeah.
And then I grew up with my own version of like media desert because I wasn't allowed to like watch stuff, and we didn't have TV or anything like that. So I grew up in like this like fundy bubble. And so all of my like film knowledge is basically from like, 19 and up. I kind of went overboard and like trying to engage with the media I missed out on.
My parents were iPad parents before iPads even existed. Like they were prop me in front of the TV.
They gave you a chalk tablet?
Yeah.
An Etch-a-Sketch.
I mean, I do remember like I had this Disney thing that connected to the TV so I could interact and like color like with the programs and stuff.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
Like, but yeah, and watching horror movies way too young, and thanks, Mom and Dad.
Well, hey, but now you're here. Look at that.
Oh no, I mean like genuinely, thank you.
Oh, genuinely, okay. Yeah.
Like,
Early adapter over here.
Yeah.
So then if you were familiar with the Legion, were you aware of like the USCCB ratings that kind of came later and they're kind of devolved at this point into?
Yeah, and then through this podcast, I have learned even more about like that rating system and the impact it had. But pretty much like every one of my favorite movies, like from history, once I start like researching it, immediately it's like, well, the Catholics banned this and this,
right?
It's all of them. Like
you'll be like, this is a great movie. What did the Catholics think? Oh, they didn't like it. Okay, yeah. There's a lot of that where I'm genuinely surprised by films. I mean, I'm excited to we're going to go back to pre-code for Halloween for one of our picks. And I'm so excited to talk about that because I actually found the press and I was like, oh, I actually found something from this era that talks about it. So that's exciting. Our next project is I really want to get into actual archives and dig for some like physical materials that are missing from the internet. So I've got some leads. I've got some leads and some connections. So we're going to have to go digging and hopefully they let us in. We're at the fake credentials, I think.
To go and like disguise.
I mean, I can still see. I may still have access.
Oh yeah, you're actually a legitimate like professor. You could do that. They'll look at me and be like, "Who's this guy?" So anyway, before we start, I need to just kind of set some things on the table here for those who don't know. When we talk about the ratings on this show, we are not using the MPAA or age ratings. We are using the Catholic Film Review System. Historically, this comes from the Legion of Decency, which, starting in the 1930s, rated movies based on moral content. Their system was very simple. A meant morally unobjectionable, B meant morally objectionable in part, and C meant condemned, as in don't see this film. Go to a confessional and ask forgiveness for even thinking about it. Today, that tradition lives on through the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, which uses a more detailed scale. A1 for general audiences, A2 for adults and adolescents, A3 for adults only, L for limited adult audiences, and O for morally offensive. These ratings are not about artistic merit or quality. A movie can be brilliant, influential, and beautifully made, and still be rated O. So before we dive into the film, let's talk about what the Catholics had to say about this movie, because having that context helps so much, I find, in talking about these films as we go through.
Hashtag John Mulderig.
Our boy John Mulderig reviewed this. I was so happy when I found that. I was like, "Oh, we get to rattle John's chain again."
You haven't gotten a cease and desist yet?
I've not gotten an email, a cease and desist, not even a tweet. He's not really active on Twitter, which I think is the only place he's on. I don't know if he has a Blue Sky. I don't think he's on Threads. Maybe he's retired. Maybe he's taking a break. I don't know.
I wish.
John, we miss you. Come on our show.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It would be really funny to get him on this show, but I don't think he likes swearing.
I was going to say, if he's not on the socials, we can't really do like, if we get X amount of likes.
We are the podcast of mild oaths. He's going to hate us.
Yeah, that's
he's not going to come on here. He doesn't like mild oaths. Gosh darn it. Because we haven't had one of these full official reviews. I talked about this recently, how like this is getting even more muddled now because the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops website no longer handles these reviews. They're published by OSV, but then they show up on a website called catholicreview.org. So I'm deeply confused by what they are doing right now to us. I think they are pulling tricks on us. I think they know what we're up to.
Yes.
And they're trying to pull one over on us.
I mean, if the First Omen taught us anything, it's that the Catholic Church is extremely undercutting and conspiratorial.
I mean, this is my conspiracy. John Molderig is hiding the reviews from us. I don't even know if he's in charge. I just think it's funny to blame him at this point. All right, from our boy John Molderig, here we go. Rosemary's Baby gets some competition in The First Omen. Director and co-writer Arkasha Stevenson's prequel to the horror franchise that dates all the way back to 1976. While, like its long-ago predecessor, the film makes exploitative use of religion, this is overshadowed by the hideous deaths it showcases. 'Tis the season, so Hollywood seems to have decided for creepy Italian convents. Such was the primary setting for Immaculate, and now we find ourselves roaming the halls of an equally sinister nunnery in search of the backstory of Gregory Peck's bad boy, Damien. Like the protagonist of Immaculate, moreover, Margaret Diano, played by Nell Tiger Free, the naive novice on whom the action centers here is an American. At least, however, the script on which Stevenson collaborated with Tim Smith and Keith Thomas gives her a more plausible excuse for being in 1971 Rome than her counterpart had for turning up in the present day Bel Paese. I mean, what is that? Bel Paese? Paese? Okay. For turning up in the present day Bel Paese. Margaret, we learn, has a powerful patron in the person of Cardinal Lawrence, played by Bill Nighy. He was once the chaplain at the orphanage in which Margaret was raised and has been watching over her ever since. Aptly, the religious community he has arranged for her to join cares for orphaned girls. While serving her novitiate, Margaret lives off-site in the company of free-spirited fellow postulant Luz Velez, played by Maria Caballero. Indeed, free-spirited hardly covers it, since at Luz's insistence, Margaret soon joins her roommate and newfound friend on a sleazy spree, drinking the night away in a bar and cruising for male companionship while dressed like a tart.
Did my mom write this? Like, oh.
This fucking guy dressed like a tart. Okay. All right. Would-be nun by day and party girl by night? Live a little before it's too late, sums up Luz's philosophy.
What's wrong with that? Like,
they had fun. I don't think, whatever. Awakening with a hangover and a foggy memory, Margaret resumes her duties, but there's something not quite right going on among the sisters, and the mystery primarily seems to concern one of their charges, frequently punished outcast Carlita Scianna, played by Nicole Sorachi. I hope that's right.
Oh, you hit that.
I
Real
put some nice spaghetti sauce on that. Just
Marinara.
She's unexpectedly approached by a furtive stranger. He's furtive. Father Brennan, played by...
Is he?
I don't
think he is.
That's a good... Maybe we'll ask...
I would like an explanation.
Put a pin in that for later.
Yeah.
Father Brennan, played by Ralph Ineson. He eventually explains that he's run afoul of a band of Satanists about who schemed to foster the birth of the Antichrist. He has uncovered too much information. I don't think that's a good sentence, John.
It's not.
I don't like that sentence. You should rewrite that. Go back to 2 years ago, rewrite that sentence. Thank you.
It's missing some punctuation is the problem.
Who edits this shit for him?
Probably ChatGPT.
No, then I would have good grammar.
There you go. Yeah, that's true.
The bishop's got money. This coven, he explains, includes high-ranking clerics from the power-hungry bad church. Not the bad church.
The one... Oh my God.
The one responsible for the Crusades and the Inquisition. This is not, of course, to be confused with the gospel-loving, quote, good church to which he and Margaret both belong. Alarmed at the fact that the Woodstock generation is leaving the pews in droves and thus escaping their control, these scheming clergymen have decided to substitute fear for faith by letting Lucifer Incarnate have his way with humanity for a while. And the evidence suggests that Carlita is their candidate for Mother of the Year.
The Woodstock generation. So reductionist, John.
Especially since we're in fucking Rome.
Yeah. It's just...
They probably don't even know what's going on.
But there were students protesting in the streets.
It's the years of lead, John Muldering. They didn't have time for Woodstock. They were doing real shit. The years of lead.
Open a history book, not the Bible.
Yeah. The need for any detailed analysis of the skewed presentation of the undeniable reality that the church is made up of sinners as well as saints is forestalled by Stevenson's indulgence in stomach-churning images of mutilation. Thus, one character has his skull split open, revealing 2 cloven chunks of his brain, while another is cut in half, quite literally spilling his guts. Does he not know how horror works, by the way?
Also, has he never watched Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD? That happens every week. Someone's getting cut in half like Paolo.
Yeah.
Come on. But also, I feel like he's including childbirth in there.
I really
stomach
think he
churning
is.
images
Which,
of mutilation.
That's just childbirth, man.
Yeah.
No, well, there's the guy who gets cut in half by the car.
Paolo, right.
Paolo,
she lifts
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Sure. I don't think that's even a particularly graphic scene when you think about...
It's done in a wide shot.
Correct.
You're up
right.
close,
and
you don't realize what happens, and it's a wide shot.
Right. The births are extremely detailed, which is why I feel like he's lumping those in there.
Well, let me finish the review, and then we'll talk about it. That's one slice of life wise viewers can do without. Get it? Slice of life. It's a pun.
Can he hear my eye roll?
I don't think you can hear eye rolls, Jess.
But it was that big.
It was huge. Was it this big? They can't see me making the Jesus cross hands right now. What is it? It's like, how much did Jesus love the world? This much.
That's not so much.
That's like a Sunday school joke, except it's really dark when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's pretty wide. It's like he loved the world 6 feet or 7 feet. How wide is that?
How wide are child's arms? I don't know.
True, but Jesus's arms would extend as they dropped from the nails as his body started to like kind of the pull of gravity. The more he dies, the more he loves the world. This is a dark place I'm going to.
Yeah.
Your face right now.
I mean, again, I'm a very visual person. I'm picturing it in detail.
Oh, true. Yeah, I did too at age 4, so, you know.
Yeah.
That's the difference between you and I. Yeah.
Why did we go into horror? Why are we into this? We say the Bible.
Well, why are we on a podcast talking about horror right now? Because I've been thinking about Jesus dying since I was 4 years old.
Exactly.
Thanks, everybody.
But also, again, like whatever, we'll talk about it more. But it's the whole like acts of mutilation. Hello, John, the Bible.
Hell yeah, the entire Bible and Catholic history. This is why they actually classified it. Let's read the description here after John's little piece he wrote. The film contains gruesome, bloody violence, mature themes, including muddled theological ideas, full nudity, a same-sex kiss. I know. Oh, no, not that. How is that even? Well, it's the Catholics. That's why. A couple of mild oaths, one of my favorites, gosh darn it, and at least one rough term.
That's my favorite.
Wait a minute. What is one rough term? What does he mean between mild oaths and one rough term? He needs to publish a glossary or something. I need like a guide, like a legend for John Muldering's reviews, because I don't know the difference between one rough term, mild oaths, and
a single instance of profanity or vulgarity.
A rough term is a single instance of vulgarity. Okay, fine. So anyway, the OSV news classification is O, morally offensive. It was rated R. There you go. You want to go first, Jess?
I mean, it's heavily reductionist. It has no care for historical context of place and time.
You don't think this is the Woodstock generation?
No, not in Rome.
Yeah, right.
Not for the, again, like fighting for, right, like the protesters and things we're seeing in the streets, setting the scene historically. That's not the Woodstock era, right?
No, this is the years of lead, which were a period of social and political turmoil that lasted from the late 60s to the 1980s.
Right. They were fighting for like literal, like, not falling back into fascism. Like this is more important.
When people talk about like the violence of the left in our country, and I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about, because the years of lead it was constant, like far right terrorism and far left terrorism.
Yes. So I think that's a big omission from this. And again, a very reductionist view. I also think, so like the first time I saw this film when it, a couple of years ago when it came out in the theaters, I remember like Bill Nighy's character kind of being like, I'm immediately suspicious because the Catholic Church doesn't care about children or orphans after they're born. So what's up with it? They want it for something.
Right.
So immediately red flag. But again, in this review, I feel like we've seen some reviewers that will hedge the middle ground a little bit more and address the critique that's present in the film of the Catholic Church that he's not willing to do, which my question would be, John, why not address the elephant in the room of this very intentional, whether, obviously it's embellished and stuff, but it's based on, real underpinnings within the Catholic Church of these calculated moves to maintain relevance.
I want a good Catholic take on this movie. It's such a complex film. There's something in this film I have a criticism of that I've criticized in The Pope's Exorcist as well. And I guess I'll bring it out right now. I struggle with these films that are like, well, actually the Inquisition was caused and the Crusades were caused by this bad church, right? This other church. In the case of The Pope's Exorcist, it's the devil, right? Oh, demonic possession is what caused the Inquisition and caused, the Crusades. And in this one, it's, there was the bad church that's trying to create the antichrist. And they're the ones who are responsible for the Inquisition, the Crusades, and not all the good stuff. And I'm like, that's just a convenient way to excuse the greater church of its crimes and its sins. And I understand they're trying to do something interesting with it here. And I don't think it's a criticism or a negative mark on the movie. It's just a trope I've been seeing lately that kind of gives me the ick because I see so much of this in Catholic circles of like trying to be like, well, the Inquisition, it was really only the Spanish Inquisition that used torture, and which is not totally true, but also, that was the state. That wasn't the church. Ignoring the fact that the church and the state were very much in bed with each other during that time period. So you can't really use those types of arguments to excuse the church. And there's just this unwillingness to like wrestle with the complicated nature of the history, especially if we're talking the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. A lot of times do not want to wrestle with that. Sometimes they do. I will give them credit. Sometimes they do, especially with their current stance on immigration. They've been willing to wrestle with some of that. National Catholic Register, EWTN, the more extremist publications, obviously, like LifeSite News, but they're a bunch of hacks, so I'm not going to talk about them. But, it's disappointing that like EWTN, which is a major media outlet, doesn't want to wrestle with the complicated nature of Catholic history. When I see a secular movie do this, it bothers me because I'm just like, that's what we do. I don't want to see that in a secular movie criticizing the church,
It's like what religion does, right? It's just fracture upon fracture upon fracture when there's disagreements. And I think that's what we're seeing like at large with Christianity right now. And like politics is forcing its hand, but we're seeing that on like a larger, broader scale of the good Christians and the bad Christians.
Hey, Pope Leo's kicking ass. So he's not perfect, but he is kicking ass right now. And I'm kind of happy about that. So
at Crystal football.
And the Pope's a baseball guy.
And
he's
he just goes,
baseball guy.
Okay.
It was the most. It was so good. He just says, "Oh, okay," in response to Little Marco.
Yeah. But now we've covered that tangent. We should see what Tif has to say.
Yes, Tif.
2 and 4, John.
Let's see what you have to say about this review.
Okay, so I was as you're reading this review, I was thinking about the omission of the abortion issue in his review, which I think he actively avoided because it's a messy can of worms for him to open in regards to this film, like the storyline, because I'm just going to call it the original Omen, because if I call it the First Omen, we're just going to get confused in circles like 15 times. So in the original Omen, there is this strong undercurrent about women's bodily autonomy and reproduction rights that were being fought for at that moment. And then, of course, now when the First Omen is coming out recently, we're doing that whole thing again. In the most recent film, there's this moment where the priests are in agreement that we are going to go get an abortion. And it's a positive thing. If they had gotten to that doctor in time, like, miracle of miracles, like, the antichrist is gone. But I think the reviewer avoided talking about even the subject matter because it opens up a can of worms, which is like, which is worse, to get an abortion or to usher in the antichrist?
Right, to like treat
a problem.
To literally treat a young woman as a vessel for the antichrist,
right?
Or to aid in her ridding the world of the antichrist.
He was like, if I go there, then my argument's gonna start getting real whack.
Well, and I feel like someone like him, because like yes, we have scenes like Paolo's death and things like that, the head splitting.
But that's just the genre trope. You need to have that in there to sell tickets.
Correct. The true body horror of the film are the birth scenes. Right. So like Margaret's obvious, like kind of hallucinated birth scene, but then the actual one at the end, right? So I think it's easier for someone like John to dismiss those conversations away as well, of just like, no, they're just scenes of like graphic, right?
Yeah.
But it's horror. Yeah. But it's wild that he's not willing to address the elephant in the room, because I've seen him in reviews talk about abortion. It's not like he's immune to talking about this, but it's so central to this.
Right.
How do you ignore that? It's right there.
It's because it was too messy for him to start poking. Because if he starts saying in a review, like, this is pro-abortion for the Antichrist and a woman who was assaulted. Like it's a hard argument to make.
Like, you shouldn't even abort the Antichrist. That would be wrong, right?
Well, there's also no direct address of rape and sexual assault. So.
I mean that too, but I mean, you know, the Catholics famously great on sexual assault and addressing it.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, I think Tif brings up a really good. There is a clear kind of anachronistic message that, you know, is being portrayed if you're going to gloss over that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm like, did he see the same film? Like, he watches film, so he watches all these dirty pictures so he can tell other people not to watch them. Right. He's just like, you know, so I know that in some sense he is well versed in like the act of consuming film and storylines. So I see this omission as purposeful. Because I think it's messy.
Yeah,
it feels very deliberate. Yeah,
and the like dress like tarts, right? Very. Yeah. She asked for it.
John Molderig, I expect some goofy ass shit in his reviews. Okay, some like very pearl clutchy. I was shocked by his use of the word tart.
Well, and it's the night like cruising for male companionship while dressed like a tart, like is very much. Well, based on how she was dressed, she was asking for the Antichrist.
They were really cruising.
No, she wasn't, and she was scared to be dressed like that. She was nervous to be out there. They literally like. It was about dancing and just like being free.
It was a normal night out at the nightclub. It wasn't cruising. Cruising is very different than what we've talked about cruising before. Like,
correct.
Very different than this.
Correct. And it's even the like reading some other, again, just secular, nothing to do with Catholic Church reviews of the film of like, you know, describing that club scene as very like sexually charged and like rich for the eyes. I'm like, is it? Like, it's not. That, like, if you're equating dancing, especially within that time period, and you're looking in European countries, if you're equating that with overtly sexual, okay.
Well, no, I think the later part of it in the club, there is some sensuality there. There is some sexiness. Like but I don't think it's like.
But it's not this like Sodom and Gomorrah type of like vibe that they're painting. Is what I'm saying.
It's like normal sensuality. Like it's being a young person and going dancing. Like,
this is just like, I think like very generic club behavior in dancing.
It's actually pretty well behaved for a nightclub. Having worked in nightclubs for years, pretty well behaved. I've seen some stuff. This is fine. Like this is just normal night out.
So I think, you know, John, we have some critiques here. I think it's kind of dripping with misogyny.
Yeah.
I think we're ignoring very important aspects of the abortion storyline. And
just the way it talks about pregnancy. Like there's like I don't think a man could direct this film this way. Personally.
No.
You could try.
And we'll talk about like especially the birthing scenes too. Like the way they're shot from a cinematography standpoint as well. Like absolutely not.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I did want to give a little bit of background on the Years of Lead before we start, just to kind of like paint the picture of like where historically this is landing, since obviously John wrote off all these young people as part of the Woodstock generation. I mentioned that this started in around 1968. There were the Hot Autumn strikes in 1969, which was like a workers' strike. This is kind of a combination of worker strikes going on in Italy, but also the sort of student movement. Same thing that's going on in the U.S. with students protesting the Vietnam War and other sort of like civil injustices going on in society. They didn't have like the same type necessarily of civil rights fights going on, but there was a lot of similarities, a lot of interconnectedness. But you're also dealing with a post-fascism Italy, where neo-fascists are very much present. And there's a lot of battling back and forth between the neo-fascists and the far left, as well as the workers and the students. And there's so much crossover, obviously, as we see today. You're always going to have people kind of like going back and forth and overlap with all that. Neo-fascist groups pursued a campaign of indiscriminate bombings and massacres known as the strategy of tension. They basically were seeking to create panic, throw the blame on the left. Basically, they would commit acts of terrorism and then blame the left. Nothing is new. And they wanted to provoke an authoritarian coup. Some things are not new in this world.
I was going to say, are we talking about present day America?
I was reading through all this last night, just being like, wow, this sounds very familiar. Out of the far left groups, the most prominent was the Red Brigade, which carried out targeted assassinations, kidnappings, and bombings intended to destabilize the state and inspire a proletarian revolution. This is the shit why when people in our country complain about the left, they're like the violence of the left or the intolerant left. I'm like, you don't know history, because we don't have a left like this in this country.
Correct. Like
we just don't.
And that's why when Donald Trump too like throws around these critiques of like liberals as Marxists, like go to Italy, read a history of like anti-capitalist.
You want our president to read a book?
Well,
Good
that's
luck.
true.
Maybe a golfing magazine, and he'll look at the pictures.
Yeah, he hasn't even read the books he wrote.
Yeah, right. I don't think he wrote the books he wrote.
No, absolutely not.
Some of the major events that happened were the 1969 Piazza Fontana bombing, the 1974 Piazza della Loggia bombing, and the 1978 kidnapping and murder of former Prime Minister Aldo Moro by the Red Brigades. The deadliest single attack of the era was the 1980 Bologna massacre, which killed 85 people. We can't even fathom an attack like that in our country outside of 9/11.
Right.
Really.
No.
And maybe the Oklahoma bombing. Between 1968 and 1988, the conflict resulted in 428 deaths and approximately 2,000 injuries attributed to political violence. The decline started in the 1980s as the violence kind of started to die down following the arrest of key Red Brigade leaders and the introduction of anti-terrorism laws that encourage militants to become state witnesses. Essentially rat people out, which in this case is a good thing.
Stepping up.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Stepping into the state, not necessarily great.
Yeah.
The turmoil of this era was fueled by rapid disruptive social changes and the post-war Italian economic miracle, which saw a mass exodus from rural areas to explosive, often chaotic growth in major cities. The transformation, combined with the paralysis of the political system, the main party was the Christian Democracy Party, the DC, which was in a permanent position, but it was very unstable as a coalition. This created deep-seated tensions in the country. There were expectations that came from a center-left experiment of the early 1960s that led to expectations of reform in housing, reform in education, and social services. But these were unfulfilled by the end of the decade, leading to a ton of disillusionment, especially among young people. The unrest coalesced in two major movements. One was the student movement and the other, the workers' movement. The Italian student movement was part of the global protests of 1968. So this does tie into the Woodstock generation in that way. Just that's a very broad brush to paint with and not really a great way to explain it. The protests actually began in Italy in 1967. And that's a lot of what we're seeing in this movie are these student protests, labor protests. This was kind of driven by a combination of factors. There was a crisis in the education system that had expanded massively, but it remained super underfunded, packed classes, overcrowding, and it had not been reformed. This student movement quickly developed a radical anti-authoritarian and anti-capitalist critique, challenging not only university structures, but also the values of consumer society and the traditional nuclear family. It drew ideological inspiration from a mixture of Catholicism, a revival of Marxist thought, and international events such as the Vietnam War and the Cultural Revolution abroad. The student protests converged with a major surge of labor unrest that reached its peak in the Hot Autumn. This is 1969, the event I talked about. During this period, millions of workers, especially in industrial cities in the northern part of Italy, became part of these widespread labor strikes. A lot of the momentum came from a younger generation of semi-skilled laborers. Many of them were immigrants from southern Italy who kind of came into harsh and impersonal assembly line working conditions in these factories. Student activists usually, like I said, teamed up with the workers on picket lines. And this is where a lot of the radicalism starts to kind of burgeon and appear. You've got wildcat strikes that occur, factory occupations that challenge corporate management. Although the unions eventually regained control and negotiated a historic contract for the metal workers by the end of 69, the Hot Autumn permanently shifts the workplace of power dynamics, and it shows kind of the growing strength of mass collective action. This is going to continue again until like the early 1980s. That's the environment we land in this movie.
And again, too, like historically, they are trying to get back rights. Like Italy had national collective agreements in place as early as like 1919, going into, the early 30s. And then fascism comes, strips those rights. When the regime fell and you're kind of rebuilding, 45, 46.
Yeah.
These things weren't being taken care of. Right. And so then you have 15, 20 years passing with growing unrest to just try to get back to where you were in 1919.
Which is sad to think about. I feel that a lot these days.
Yep.
Honestly. Well, listen, let's dive into the plot of this movie.
Act 1. In 1971, Margaret, a young American novitiate, arrives in Rome to take her vows at the Vizzardelli orphanage. Against a backdrop of civil unrest and a church desperate to reclaim its waning influence, Margaret discovers a sinister conspiracy. After bonding with a shunned orphan named Carlita, Margaret is cornered by a disgraced priest who warns her of a radical plot for the church to birth the antichrist. Following a gruesome public suicide by a nun at the convent, the first act concludes with Margaret realizing that her superiors are orchestrating a horrific, supernatural event to terrify the world back into religious submission.
So this film opens with a pretty horrific scene of this priest comes to visit, Father Brennan, who is, I immediately recognize as like looking very much like Father Brennan from the original Omen, right? Mm-hmm. Comes to visit this priest, Charles Dance, who only is in the first part of the film, gets his head split open in an amazing kill. I love this
because you don't realize it at first because he's like walking away.
He seems fine. You're like, oh, it missed him. Okay, it was a setup, and then he turns around, you see his brain split open.
Yeah. Well, you really want the pull to come through him.
Yeah.
So I think the director is immediately kind of subverting both our expectations and our desires, I think, in that scene. Because we have the great like pull, the steeple, whatever, not a steeple. It was like it was some kind of
spire
metal
from the
pole. Going through the priest. So it's some nice foreshadowing to like his own fate as well.
I did love that he's the one there witnessing that.
Yeah. And then the stained glass, I was like, oh, who is that saint? And it's Saint Lawrence, who's on the stained glass up there.
Oh, yes.
I was like falling. And I was like, oh, he must have some sort of interesting martyrdom because
I know his death.
Because this was chosen for the film. But so I was like, oh, he must have been like beamed on the head or something. But he was actually grilled to death.
Yes.
Yes, grilled to death. And his last words, of course, this is probably just made up, but his last words were supposedly, "I am well done, turn me over."
It's one of my favorite like saint jokes.
Yeah. Well, he's the saint of cooks and comedians, which is just incredibly morbid. But he's often shown with a spear or like a club.
Ah, okay.
Why, I do not know. Maybe to like poke him, to roll him over. I'm not sure.
He's rotisserie chicken.
That's what I always imagine. Is him just on rotisserie.
Like a spire from a cathedral top just being rotated over a spit.
Man, Can I rename myself? My confirmation saint? Can I pick a new one? Can I change it up?
Ye saint of rotisserie
I didn't know
chickens.
what I was doing at that age. Like, now I know. I'm like, St. Lawrence, that's my guy right there.
I gotta tell you, my weekly Costco run for rotisserie chicken, I'm not gonna look at it the same.
You're just gonna imagine St. Lawrence's face popping out,
just saying, dozens of St. Lawrence's in the cooker.
Jess, help me.
I'm still gonna eat it, but yes.
This scene also, the story is relayed of the impregnation of this young woman whose identity is not revealed by a jackal. Mm-hmm. This is the one scene where you get kind of a clear-ish view of the jackal, and even then it's still kind of like Alien, the first Alien, where this is really smart what she does, and it's the thing that I think so many sequels don't learn, or prequels don't learn from the really good one, is how to keep the monster in the shadows enough that you never really fully see it, so you maintain the fear.
Well, and she incorporates that idea, and I mean everything she's doing with. I think so many like prequels and sequels could take a lesson from this, of all of these bridges she's creating. Whether it's like we talked about this, earlier, like you and I just conversed, like sonic bridges with music, or
at the end, especially
visual bridges, right? Implementing, like, again, trying to cross over 76 and 71, go back to that era, but we're also like location wise in Rome, so we're hearkening back to like Baroque style things, right? So we're implementing this, like, we can have the monster hiding in the shadows by using tenebrism and chiaroscuro and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's really freaking smart.
It is. Yeah. No. And I think, it sets up everything really well. We're expecting someone to, that we're going to meet is going to be the woman who was impregnated by the jackal. At first, we're kind of led to believe it's the 13-year-old.
Yeah, and they're right. Like, we want to be looking
Carlita.
For a mark. Yeah. Yes, but we think it's Carlita because Carlita's troubled.
She's troubled, so it could be her. I at first was thinking maybe it was Luz, because Luz is so sexual and not like a nun. So I was like, well, obviously she is
the
totally like not. Yeah, she's being she's being a tart. To quote John,
out there cruising for men like a tart.
And it's done in a way it's really good, because even I was, as someone who watches a lot of horror and who is ex-Catholic, I was still shocked by her kind of flagrant behavior about being a nun, because I like I said, we had somebody on our last episode, Veronica, who studied to be a nun, wanted to be a nun. I know how important that calling is. It's still shocking to me to see somebody flagrantly treat their calling like that. It was really that was actually kind of disturbing to me, because I was like, what's her deal? She's got to have the devil inside her, right? Like,
she's almost like more of a true believer, because we have this like beautiful shot of her telling her story of like the night she was called by God into the Lord's service. And then we have Margaret just like almost in tears, and she has this like look of longing on her face, that she wishes that she too had this like mystical experience, this calling that she seems to have missed. She seems to like have not gotten that experience. Yeah, but I agree that it feels very it feels like cognitive dissonance that she's like out on the town and wild, and like sowing her last wild oats before gives it all up.
Right.
Like you said, though, Bill Nye's interest in Margaret is a little concerning.
I think Luz too serves, and even Carlita, are really great red herrings.
Yes.
And I think like Luz primarily exists as like a foil to Margaret, but also I think she kind of represents, again, if we want the Woodstock era, right? If we want to highlight that in 1971, and this fear that the church within the film has of, becoming too modernized, of falling to the secular world, Luz in her behavior kind of recognizes that, right? This new church or bad church.
Right.
That they're trying to fight against.
Although it's really the old church, but it's been around.
Yeah, very true. All of the cinematography and like mise en scène and design work that is set in this act, to be like compounded on and just so beautifully built up in the second and third acts, I'm just, again, also obsessed with.
This movie, well, it doesn't have the same atmosphere as the original Omen. It has its own atmosphere.
And she's trying to, right? And so where, again, technical aspects, we're shooting in an Arri Alexa 65. They're using DNA lenses so they can meet, large format, big screens of contemporary theaters, right? So we're talking ultra screens, things like that.
Right.
But also match that kind of visual tone, of the original film, right? Because to get that, these DNA lenses are going to help pull light to the edges of the film and kind of soften, right, the edges of the frame. You get that kind of halo-like glow on it. And then digital graining, right, can only do so much to mimic 35 millimeter, right? And you can kind of tell the artificiality of it, but they're trying.
It helps sell it in your brain though, because I use digital graining a lot, like when I want the 3D to like look older, like it's old sci-fi or something.
But like when you're using it like for that, or like the way these scenes are lit. So again, like we're establishing that tenebrism or chiaroscuro, which is like the tenebrism, like it's like there's a spotlight, whether it's coming from the windows, candlelight, things like that. That type of lighting and the colors that they're playing with, which start cool and second and third acts get warmer, like that graining looks really awesome. And like the old walls of the church and stuff, it looks great.
It looks new, but it looks really painterly, I guess is the right word I would use.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like Baroque painting.
It looks Baroque. Yeah. That's very accurate.
It's lit from within. Right.
I'm also, I think this is an interesting film in terms of like the costumes and the design of something in The Killer Nun we talked about that I really went on about was how there was no thought put into the look of the sets and the look of the costumes. And so you've got white nuns on a white hospital background for most of that damn movie. And then like Anita Ekberg's blue eyeshadow is just like popping at you. And you're like, why? Who did this? So this film is like such a palate cleanser compared to that when it comes to like the mise-en-scene and also just like the staging and the camera work. So
it's just insanely thoughtful.
Yeah. That, I think, I know it's been used in a lot of promotional stuff, but there's the shot of her face after the night out partying where all of her hair is on the pillow.
Yes.
And it's sort of arranged in this almost like spider-like arrangement all around her. And there's this recurring motif of like the spiders. And I think you're pulling back from a extreme close-up of a spider on her eyelashes.
There's like a macro
on her
shot.
face,
There's like a macro shot on her face first.
Yes, and then we get this like other shot of her laying there, and we don't know the full implications of what she has gone through yet, because she herself does not remember. It's just a breathtaking shot, just gorgeous, like almost like I'm like this has no business being this beautiful.
It is, and like the color saturation in that scene, like the purple too, and like the wide angle lenses that she uses in really tight spaces and close up shots are just phenomenal. And I mean, she uses them in like further shots as well to create, especially with like Carlita, which we can talk about because I love the way Carlita is like framed in her scenes. But with Margaret, the use of like wide angle lenses in these close up shots. And the really smooth camera work in the first act, a very like anchored, harnessed camera work that we see, will diverge from in act 2. It's just very like steady, methodical, creeping.
And again, that's a good setup because when you go later, when you do a steady cam shot or you go handheld for something, it has more power.
Yep.
Because
framing.
You've had these very stable shots.
Like Margaret is always very symmetrical within arched doorways, things like that, versus Carlita, who's a more, at the beginning, like another red herring, chaotic character. So I rewatched this on the tail end of watching the new Wuthering Heights, and I was like, oh man, if only that could have fallen in the right hands, let me tell ya.
We're going to do Wuthering Heights at some point, everybody.
I could talk for days.
Watch it yet. I have to let
like a 6-hour episode
die down so I can like be clear-headed about it.
It'll still destroy you.
I've seen too much.
I tried to go in with an open mind. I was ready to dive in and really embrace the sort of like over the top maximalism, and I just couldn't. It was like it was so I found it very disrespectful to the text.
I found it disrespectful to filmmaking, but no, I won't give her the time right now. I won't give her the time.
That'll be another episode. It has to be like a 3-parter. That'll be the trilogy of episodes on Wuthering Heights.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie, well, Tiff already talked about one of the favorite scenes, which is with Margaret, the spider crawling her face after and everything. It almost looks like she's like floating, like she's not even on a bed. But anyways, when we first go in to meet Carlita and she's scribbling, right, Margaret meets her and she's scribbling and her drawings are on the wall. And she's just like this tiny little thing, again, wide angle lens, trapped in the corner of this big room, right? And the frame is kind of like eating her up. And again, really beautiful, controlled, like dolly cam shot, just zoop, following right to that little creep crawling under the bed out. And we don't know what's going to happen.
I like that we set up before we meet her, we see the wall of the children's art.
Yep.
And hers, she comes on Carlita's drawing, and I'm like, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, who is this person?
And we that's where we start, right? Our circles and teeth motif, right?
So it's cool, like, how they set up the characters being disturbed. And so you're automatically assuming, obviously, this is who is carrying, and it's so sad because she's like 13, right? It's just, it's very tragic, and it points again to the Catholic Church's pattern of sexual abuse of minors.
That everyone's first guess is the 13-year-old.
Right. And I think there's a lot of Catholic guilt and shame in this movie surrounding the more tragic parts of our past, the more like harrowing chapters in church history. And this is one of them. And I just love the whole setup of her in this movie. I have to say too, I didn't talk about this. I love the way we're introduced to Rome in 1971 in this movie with this very almost it's not Fellini, it's appealing to the sort of Fellini era, La Dolce Vita idea of Rome. It's very beautiful, golden colors, bright, she's excited to be in Rome. It's this happening, exciting place. And that is all destroyed by a wonderful sound editing and sound design choice by just the loudest fucking knock on the car. Scared the shit out of me while watching this movie. And you suddenly realize, like, oh, this is political, chaotic turmoil that we are landing in, and we will be in it for this entire movie.
There's litter, there's signs, there's graffiti.
This is not the Fellini fantasy version of Italy. This is what's actually happening.
This is not Emily in Paris.
No.
I can't bring myself to watch that either.
Operazione Dynamite. That's not a real movie. That's a Leonardo DiCaprio film from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And
but that kind of era.
Yeah, in the original The Omen, we also have a little bit of time in Rome, just like very briefly. In the beginning, when there's the handoff or the switcheroo of the babies at that hospital, and that is shot at night and has a way more like peaceful atmosphere. Rather than the sort of chaos that we're dropped into in this film, which, they were saying different things at the time because, in the original Omen, Americans were dealing with post-Vietnam, very close post-Nixon. Conspiracy was proven. In American politics, in this entire upheaval of distrusting your government. So the original, The Omen, the themes are very much like the Antichrist is coming through American politics. This is where we're looking for like the end of the world.
Have you seen the third Omen movie?
Not for quite a while.
Okay. I'm just saying it ends up in that kind of place, right?
Yeah. But I'm just thinking about this film being made at a time. Also, we're having a big like social upheaval, and then also you have Peter Thiel calling everybody and their sister the Antichrist.
Well, not just that. Peter Thiel just had a meeting in Rome about the Antichrist.
Yes, he did a series of lectures.
Yeah,
not so secret.
Yeah. I mean, has anyone seen Peter Thiel and Damien in the same place at the same time?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, and he named his company Palantir, which is the balls that Saran uses to keep an eye on everybody. So, totally normal guy.
Well, this diverges from the Peter Thiel part, but to kind of highlight something that both of you touched upon was like, for me, one of the biggest themes for this film is this idea that, like, again, art history background. I could talk about, Bernini all day long, but Gian Lorenzo Bernini. So this idea that like ecstasy and pain go hand in hand, right? So you can have like this beautiful city, but there's this like social upheaval and pain happening, and we see that within the film. Very
Catholic.
Within like the art that's highlighted in the film and stuff like that. If you want to check one out, one of his sculptures, Ecstasy of St. Teresa. It's a great example of that. And along with the sort of spider themes, the teeth themes, there's the serpentinata, right? Twisting and contortion of the human body. We see that throughout like Baroque work and sculpture. We see that theme a lot in like body horror films, right? Mm-hmm. Possession, things like that, the way the body can contort. And we're definitely seeing that in the childbirth scenes.
And immolation. Is that the right word?
Yes.
Self-immolation? Yeah.
Yeah, the scene where the claw crawls out of her is deeply disturbing.
It's very Baroque.
And again, like, I'm not saying a man wouldn't shoot a pregnancy scene to be that disgusting, but I do think there's a level of disgusting that a woman can really achieve. Like, I do think...
But also, is it... I'm going to push back here, Bill, as, on this with two women. Is it just, like, I don't find that disgusting. Like, it's an unexpected thing coming out, right?
Well, more so the claw. I don't like claws near my genitals. That's more where I'm getting at here.
Well, I mean, it's not going in, it's coming out.
No, but the actual pregnancy scene it's unglamorous, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not in any way touched up. She's not holding back. She's just like, yeah, look at this. This is like the miracle of life is messy.
And we're talking about Luce here, right? So, I mean, it's unglamorous in that this woman has no bodily autonomy in this moment. She is being strapped down. She is obviously in agony, being drugged, which has a momentary impact, but there's something more at play here, right? As though she's possessed. And like the only thing that was like that maybe was jarring to me was like, yeah, friggin' claw came out. But otherwise, again, we're talking about this. So Stevenson in an interview I was telling you about talks about like since childhood been super influenced by George O'Keeffe and wanted to impart so again, George O'Keeffe loved vaginas and flowers, wanted to impart that in the birthing scenes. And so she wanted these scenes to sort of oscillate between close-ups so close. So think about like a George O'Keeffe painting, it's so close the flower becomes abstracted, right?
Right.
And so that's what she was kind of hoping to achieve, which I think she did achieve really well with it. And so again, like I think, yes, they're not glamorous.
What I'm getting at is that I think we are scared of showing childbirth for what it is on screen.
Oh, for sure. Because like,
a culture,
watching this at home, my husband's like, whoa, they could show that much? And it's like, yeah, I mean, we don't. It's one thing on National Geographic, but...
And there are other movies that do this. Titan is a good example of that.
Sure.
If you've seen Titan. My reaction was kind of like, I feel like a male director might hold back a little bit only because there is this like idea that we need to protect pregnancy on screen, right?
Sure.
And not
I mean, you're fully seeing her crown. And again, the way that this is shot so close up with a body... partially obfuscating the scene, right, of a nun helping with the birth, on and off, kind of covering half of like the vagina, the birth canal, all of that. Again, like what I think this is so well done is she's literally crowning, and you think like that's a baby's head, right?
Right.
No, until that little claw comes out and grabs her leg, right? Like,
well, that's the part. Yeah, that's the part I'm like, that's the part I'm really reacting to is the slimy hand coming out. I was like, that's not what I thought was going to happen.
That's how babies look to me. So
I get maybe I feel like you could probably handle it a little bit better than I am.
I mean, if I were giving birth and that's not what came out, Kelly and I have talked about this. If I were giving birth and it's not like a scene from Alien, I'm disappointed. Also, I would never give birth. Children aren't for me. But, I think it's still a beautiful, it's a beautifully done scene.
It's really well shot. It's pretty incredible, honestly. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's a really... I mean, I think it's one of those like scenes people will talk about 10, 20 years from now in horror because it's just so well staged, well shot, well executed. It's really great.
Because I think you go from this, right, like she's crowning and stuff, and you go from this empathetic perspective of like this woman is writhing in pain and seems like outside of her body, right, with whatever's going on with her. And there's this empathy for her in childbirth. And then when you see what's coming out of her, then it becomes this like true body horror.
I also think this is the moment in the movie where I'm like, okay, this is no longer in any way a retread. You know what I mean? This is the moment where the director is saying, this is going to be its own thing. I'm putting my own stamp on this. And I thought that was really an important scene for the movie in that way.
Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I think
on that episode.
It's the most effective horror so far in the film for me. Because before that, we have the priest that's beamed in the head. Like,
right.
Okay, we don't know him. We don't care about him. He's dead. And then we have this like weird, and it felt very much like The Nun. It felt like The Nun, where we have her habit in the corner, and I'm like, oh, it's going to become a like creepy old nun, and then it becomes a creepy old nun, and it's kind of like, that film honestly feels cheap, and it didn't really. It was just like, we need to put some horror here because it's a horror. Like, I really think that was the like story thinking. So this birthing scene is really when we're starting to be like, oh, we're doing body horror here. It's not just like outside weird stuff happening. Right. Like, it's coming from within.
Right. And I think like Bill's reaction too is like warranted and kind of wanted, right? Of like, first of all, her loss of autonomy in the scene sets the scene to be more reactionary. Right. And that loss of autonomy is usually necessary for body horror to be effective. But I think also, you know, body horror is meant to like elicit intense feelings of like physical discomfort. And so if you're already uncomfortable with, not that we should be, but again, if you're uncomfortable with the like physical act and visual up close of birth, because it's not something we see, like it's something we evade in our media, then to already have that discomfort and be on edge, and then you have this demon coming out instead, it makes it, I think, just so like it just keeps leveling up.
I mean, I did win medals for anatomy and biology in science Olympiads, so like I was looking at this stuff a long time ago.
I don't think that's the flex you think it is, but that's...
Have I also told you about my second place solo and ensemble medal for playing cowbell? True story. Wow. No, but I mean, I've been familiar with childbirth images since I was pretty young. So like that's not really what disturbs me so much. But I think what does disturb me personally is having watched women in my life navigate the medical system, the sort of like uncertainty of a world where men literally want to pass laws to like control my wife, to control other women in my life.
But that's the point, right? Yeah, I don't think you're uncomfortable with like female anatomy and processes, but this actual thing that like culturally, we are like, birth comes up in body horror films all the time because it is something we are.
And the idea of something growing inside you against your will, I think, is terrifying, even to men. Like, because we can't have that happen, obviously, and we don't have the experience of like knowing that could happen to us. But I mean, if you're anybody, I guess I have empathy, so that's my problem. Is I watch these movies and I'm like, oh, that would suck. You know, like that would be terrible. I'd hate that.
I mean, the whole birth is like very parasitic and right.
Yeah,
like that's
the and if you don't want that, if you didn't sign on for it, it's like
correct, and you're forced into that, and your autonomy is taken, and like again, that's what like there are certain criteria for body horror, right? Which like one of them is loss of autonomy, the other is that like they call it like a squick feeling, right? Of like a sudden intense ick feeling, right? And like the body being mutilated or contorted or reshaped. So like childbirth does fall under those things. The body is being reshaped and contorted. And again, like this scene, I think checks all those boxes.
I think it's really interesting how that scene is shot. Like Margaret is actually not in the room. She is a spectator looking through this frame, just like we are actually in the room. We're watching her outside of the room, and we're in the room. It's just a really interesting directorial choice of like spectacle and spectator, where we kind of are the spectator of the spectacle on our screens, but then we have Margaret in the same position we are in. And I think it lends some level of empathy for her and seeing things through her eyes in that particular scene. I think that's another reason it's like a powerful scene where I feel like more connected to her.
Yeah, because because we watch her faint and react, right? Like, I think that's a really apt observation, because I think it puts us in a better position to not just witness the birth, but also her reaction and, I mean, her really visceral reaction.
Do we think that birth really happens, or we think it's like a hungover hallucination?
No, it's a vision. Like she has
it's a vision. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
yeah, because Luce didn't have a baby bump. Yeah.
But the horror of the woman strapped down, drugs, in this position, and her loss of bodily autonomy, as well as the fact that she's probably not going to be able to keep her baby. This baby is probably going straight into the orphanage, and she's going to get booted off to, wherever she came from. So, because this is the sort of place where women go when they're in trouble.
Yeah, this is like the mother and child houses in Ireland, which were infamous for, they rip the baby from your arms. The baby, you never see that baby again, right?
And I think, like Tif touched on earlier too, it's a scene meant to highlight Margaret's eventual pregnancy and birth, right? I mean, she makes similar sounds to the ones that Luce makes, very like inhuman. She's kind of possessed, not of herself or her own mind or body. So, yeah.
Now, before we get out of Act 1, I do really want to talk about something in this movie, in this first act. Disco. So, yeah, as somebody who knows probably too much about disco, I was Googling, what year is this supposed to take place? This is like the late 60s, early 70s, so it's 1971. And they're in the bar, and I hear the song, specifically the song Daddy Cool by Boney M, and I'm immediately like, no. Euro disco does not exist in 1971. This is what a nerd I am about this.
I was like, you and Hans are such nerds, because he was totally Team Bill, and I was like, I've got some gripes with this.
Okay, well, I think here's the thing. I think the vibe works. It gets the idea across in terms of storytelling. Whatever, it does the job.
You are correct, but you are one of the like 1% highly intelligent niche that are like, what the hell? This just took me out of it.
There's an entire Reddit thread I found on this that people were bitching about it. Yep, so it's not just me; it's other Boney M fans. Okay,
because from a film perspective, I'm like, this is great sonic bridge to 76, because I looked the song you mentioned. I looked that up. I was like, so that's great. And I was like, it fits the vibe. It's giallo-esque, right? It's setting a tone.
I mean, there are some good choices. Like, for example, this is the beat era in Italy, so it's more of we're in a weird bridge period between the late 60s, which was kind of the beat era, more of a psychedelic rock club type of environment, maybe jazz, maybe
is this like R&B?
R&B would be big. We don't have the disco clubs yet. So this
proto disco.
It's not even that.
Not even that yet.
It's not even that. What it is it's this era of like experimentation, heavy experimentation. It predates electronic like instruments. Really, I mean, the Moog exists, but you can't afford one. The Beatles can afford one. Okay, you're going to see a lot of like psych bands trying to do soul, but they're Italian, so it's not quite right. Interestingly, I really approve of the choice of Raffaella Cara, because she was a big, this is the era of a lot of Italian TV celebrities becoming the pop stars. Like, they're on TV, they're singing songs that are, they're modern pop, but they're very rooted in like traditional Italian melodies and ways of making music. And disco is this very Western thing that comes in later. So Raffaella Cara is like one of the first people to embrace disco in the mid 70s. So I do find it super interesting that they use the song Rumore from 1974, because that's kind of like one of the first kind of attempts to bridge the genres, right? So that was fascinating to me. It's just too early, but I guess, I mean, like you said, vibes.
Can I ask you, as someone who is an expert in this, like what you think Stevenson's choices may have been, knowing that, right? Like, I get from a bridge and a thematic perspective, those choices, but why you think that someone in that position would make those choices, knowing that someone may, like you, point out those anachronisms.
Well, I think first of all, Raffaella Cara is a great call. Even though it's later, she's really important to Italian music during this time. She's relevant. So to pick a song by her makes sense. Like I said, she's also the bridge to bringing disco to Italy from the US. I think the choice of the flirtation song, Need Your Loving, I have the 45 because I'm a big nerd. That's a great inclusion, because I think that is the kind of vibe they would have actually played in that club. Daddy Cool is too early. That is, but I just feel like that's probably the director being like, I really like Boney M. I want to throw Boney M in here. And I get that impulse. I think to really understand what this would have been like in real life, or at least like a close approximation, there's a lot of giallo that has more accurate representations of what these nightclubs would have been like. I made kind of like a little mini list for myself. I think,
which is like, I felt like that's what she was going for, right? It was very much of that vein.
But that's why I was kind of like, why not use like more of the soul jazz, the sort of psychedelic rock and things that would, like a great example of what a club, I mean, it's a soundstage nightclub design, but the club from Danger Diabolic with the psych rock band is exactly the type of venue that would have been in Italy, like an Italian city during this time. And there are different types of clubs too. You have to remember that. But also, there are great examples of this in the movie Death Walks on High Heels. There's a kind of striptease nightclub scene that has music that is very much the kind of stuff that probably would have been played in an Italian nightclub during this time. Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion is like textbook what you would have seen in a nightclub in 1971 in Italy. There's also The Case of the Bloody Iris has nightclub scenes. So I think if you watch giallos, which are, we've talked about the giallo genre movies before from Italy during this time period, that is more accurate to what you would actually see. And often there would be DJs, but it's usually like a live band DJ mix, depending. Soul DJs were a thing. There were people who played rock 45s, but DJ culture and club culture as we know it, that really doesn't make it to Italy until like the mid to late 70s. Because disco doesn't go mainstream in America until 1977. It's underground starting in like 72, 73 in New York, not across the nation. Right. And it's primarily Black, gay, and Latino. Remember, this is pre-internet. So to get culture from, New York, from Larry Levan all the way to Italy takes some work. Imports are expensive. Most shops don't just carry underground records. You have to find them. So I totally understand what she's doing here. It doesn't take, it takes me out of the movie, but I'm a fucking nerd. But like, I just had to mention it because it was like one of these things where I'm like, I know too much about this not to be a big nerd and say something about it. So
fair.
But it's fun. And at the end of the day,
I love it.
It's fun. It was entertaining at this moment.
And I'm not here to be a buzzkill about it, but since we are talking about the history.
Buzzkill, Bill.
This is my time to shine, Jess. This knowledge has to be used for something.
We all have our tisms.
Yeah,
mine is butterflies.
Butterflies?
Yes.
Like show in films?
Oh, I wish there were more films just butterflies.
You just know random stuff about butterflies?
I do. That was always my STEM when I was a kid. Yeah.
Oh, snap. So like instead of dinosaurs, you were into butterflies.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Oh, I like that. It's very whimsical.
But I thank you. I would like to think I'm whimsical, but I appreciate that yours is music. And again, until you said something about it, that's why I was like, what's going on with this? Because I thought this scene like thematically fit really well. And I looked up the one song and like, well, I mean, it's a great bridge. 76. We have, the original taking place and stuff. But then I was like, I trust Bill. I'm going to see where this is going.
People really forget about like when music actually came out, because like when you look at what the hits were in 71 in the US and then you look at like the rock tracks and stuff, it's wild. Sometimes there are things that come out way later than I think they did. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think, and a lot of times we think of like, oh, it's the 70s. Of course, disco's big. And it's like, well, no, not really, because like disco, it starts to gain traction in like 74, 75. And then it blows up in 77 and the backlash is like 78, 79. And then in Italy, it keeps going. That's the other thing. But we won't talk about that tonight because that's its own podcast episode.
Well, do you feel satiated on that front?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Tif, did you have something to add to that?
Oh, well, while we're down this trail, how do you feel overall about the score and the sound design? Like, I rewatched both of these in order. So I watched the original, The Omen, which won the Oscar for Best Score. That's the only Oscar it won for this.
Is that Jerry Goldsmith, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, okay. And he has this like very, he has this like inverted, like diabolical Ave Maria thing going on. And it's such a fantastic score. It actually elevates the film The film's like direction and acting, it actually just elevates the film in general. The score is so good. Whereas like I feel like this score just kind of seeps back into the background a little bit more. It didn't have that like power. I think it had a lot more visual power.
It's a complicated problem with modern films. I think a lot of modern films, the intent of the score is to kind of be there but not take up space. The 70s was the revival of classic Hollywood, and a lot of this is due to John Williams, but Jerry Goldsmith plays a big role in this as well. You know, the idea of like you have these strong leitmotifs, these themes that are very present in the movie. They're just like, and we don't really do that very much anymore, with the exception of like, I think of like the Avengers, like the Marvel films kind of do that sometimes, but not all the time. And the score is more about subtly supporting the action. And I appreciate that, because you don't always want the score to be in the way.
I don't know how I feel now, because now Tiff's making me look at it differently. Because the original, like you said, is phenomenal. Like Goldsmith, the Gregorian chants and stuff like included in it are just so good. But like I really love, because I listened to an interview that Mark Corvin was the composer, and he worked really closely with Stevenson. And so I was listening to an interview he did, and I just really feel like Acts 1 and 2. It's a background player. It's building. But there's this like delayed gratification in Act 3 where it gets really like choral.
That's
and
the thing.
The callback to those Gregorian chants come in that I feel like it's so worth it.
I have a theory about this. So, I think that you're so right. This score is trying to be polite and respect Jerry Goldsmith's score. So it's holding back and building into the Goldsmith elements. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of actually what Clint Mansell did in Black Swan with Tchaikovsky.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's subtly pulling bits from it, but you don't get full Tchaikovsky until the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Right.
But you're hinting at it, right?
But I feel like, too, like if I hadn't, before rewatching, if I hadn't listened to his interview, I would feel exactly the way Tiff did about it. Where that it was maybe a little bit of a letdown, especially if I'm concurrently watching the films and I'm listening to that Goldsmith. And it's not that like I feel like one is superior. I just think they're doing two different things. But until you get to that Act 3, I feel like you're right there again. And it's just it makes it almost like even sweeter because of that, again, that kind of delayed gratification.
I definitely kind of freaked out when the theme started coming in. Because I was like, oh, we're tying it in.
Because you're waiting the whole movie for it.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what it reminded me of. It reminded me of some other great endings of movies where you start to put all the pieces together and the music kind of supports that. And I'm trying to think of the example, but I don't know. I liked it. I'm curious because she's alive still and, you know, Brennan comes to her. I am wondering if there's going to be a second Omen prequel between this movie and the original Omen, because there's the little girl, right?
Yeah.
So like, what happens with that?
Story-wise, I think there's some really interesting things happening with like, how do you tell a prequel that actually, like, if you're going with like the canon of the original film, the mother to Damien was the jackal. Was the jackal. So that's not a story. Obviously, like a dog running around, or, you know, and so you could think about that as like symbolic. She's a symbolic jackal, and then they just buried the jackal, the dead jackal in her grave. But then in the beginning, we're like, oh, okay, it's, you know, the devil, whatever that beast is, that's the jackal. So it's actually the father that's the jackal. So we have some interesting like anti-canon stuff going on story-wise, just from the jump, which I think it's kind of cool, because we're like, oh, we actually don't know exactly what happened in this film before we sat down to watch it. Because it would be really easy to be like, oh, a nun got pregnant with the devil, and that's it. But there's a lot more layers and twists that I think are really way more exciting. The like eugenics projects, which we haven't touched on yet. That might be for the next episode.
We can save it for the next episode.
Yeah.
And on that note, let's move on to the next episode. Tiff, thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to ask, where can people find out about you? What are you up to right now that people can check out?
If you want to follow me on my socials, it's Hollywood Junkyard, all one word, on Threads, on Instagram, and then Tif Robinette Writes.com is where I kind of like put all of my news and links. And then I have a Substack under my name, Tif Robinette, as well, that I occasionally put stuff on. I have some really exciting news to share in July. Ooh. So if you want to hear exciting career, very exciting career news, you'll have to keep track of me on my socials. I just can't talk about it yet, which is terrible.
I just wanted to add that I read your additional elegancies for additional cost, which people can read on fanelit.com, and that was a super fun read. I did that this weekend, so I would encourage people to give that a little dive as well.
Fantastic. Well, listen, if anybody wants to check out what we're up to, we are Morally Offensive Pod at most social media outlets. We are on Threads, Instagram, YouTube. We are very active on TikTok. And we currently have merch at our store at www.morallyoffensive.com. I literally just added, I did a video on this, but I just added trucker hats. I am a bald man. I really struggle with finding hats that fit me and don't hurt at the same time. We ordered some initial snapbacks, and I was like, I look like a submarine captain. So I tested out a new product. I got a more low profile trucker hat. It's awesome. It fits perfectly for my big bald head. So if you're a man who struggles or a woman who struggles to find a hat that's a nice trucker hat for summer, it's got a mesh back. I really like it. Otherwise, we have tote bags, t-shirts. We have tons of Filthy Habits merch that I'd love to see out in the wild. So if you want to check that out, it's www.morallyoffensive.com. And please support the show.
Are you going to use your little like slutty Instagram pics for the hat merch?
My slutty Instagram pics? Oh, where I'm like posing in front of the lighthouse?
Yeah.
Sure. I should just put it on the website.
You should.
All right. I'll put it on there.
Okay.
It might sell more hats. We have sold
or less. We don't know.
No. We literally got orders after I put that pic up.
Then put it
so
on the
site. I need to be putting more slutty pictures of me next to a lighthouse on Instagram. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of Morally Offensive. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast in your podcast app of choice. This absolutely helps us get attention and raise awareness about the show. Please join us next time as we continue our way through the plot and making of The First Omen with special guest Tif Robinette. Thanks again for listening, and as always,
go and sin no more.
Truth is there are two. Wait, is this Brandon, right? The truth is there are two churches. Wait, the truth is there are two churches. The truth is there are two churches.
Yeah, it's going.
The one that follows the teaching of Christ.
Going Italian.
I gotta not do Pope's Exorcist on this.
The truth are there are two churches. Two churches. Two churches. Truth is there are two churches. Yep. What are you doing putting your fingers in the holy water for? Okay, there we go. And then I tone it down.
Wear me lucky charms.